Okay, guys and girls, we're back on the Investigative Journal on this, what day is it? Wednesday. Boy, we took a few days off for the holidays, and I traveled up and down Baja. You know where that's at? In Mexico. And somebody told me it was dangerous, but I had a great time and felt even safer here than I did in New York. Greg Anthony here on the Investigative Journal. And I remember when I returned to New York from Italy when I lived in Rome, and I hadn't been back in a while. Lived there for a better part of 6 or 7 years. And the first thing that happened to me was when I was walking down Midtown Manhattan, somebody forearmed me in the chest out of no reason and kept walking saying, you jerk, what are you doing here? So, they tell me that Mexico is dangerous. But I'll tell you what, I feel safer here than I did in Mexico. Well, I'm back in the States and overlooking the homeless crisis here in San Diego. It's incredible. The other day I was walking down the street. Well, I was getting off my boat, and it's in the fishing village. And it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and there was this naked guy in the parking lot screaming and yelling, and I said, hey, you better get some clothes on because it's early, but there's going to be kids walking around here because this is a tourist area. And he said, I can do what I want. I said, okay. So anyway, this lady who works on the docks, an older lady, said the same thing and said, you better get your clothes on or I'm calling the police. Well, he ran into an area where the dumpsters were. It's kind of an enclosed area for people who kept their boats there. And the dumpster is there, but it had a door. He ran in there and was hiding behind the dumpster. I went in to throw my garbage out, and guess what he does? He says, I don't want to leave. I'm staying here. I said, fine, I won't lock the door so you're stuck in here. But anyway, after a little time passed, guess what happened? The police came, and he was ushered away. Now, as you walk in San Diego in that area, you're going to find so many homeless people on the streets. There's a little tent community, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Why in a country like ours do we have this? The reason is because people listen to these bullshit politicians, and they listen to their pastors on the pulpit, or they give money to the Catholic Church, and we're not really addressing any problems. And you know what? I don't have any sympathy anymore for any people in America. There are a lot of dumb, stupid idiots in this country. And of course, my listeners, you're not one of them. But let me tell you something. You ever go around and talk to these people? I mean, it's like I'm in it's like a alien universe. You have no idea what's going on. And in fact, every day I do this show, I say to myself, this is the last one I'm doing. Because I've been at this a long time, and I've gotten every kind of email and communication from every nutcase in the world, along with getting communication from some really smart, truthful people, but nothing ever gets accomplished. And I sit here talking to you, hopefully, to get the message out to a few people, because, you're dealing with YouTube, and you're dealing with Facebook now, and just this barrage of social media that can be censored. And you never know if you're being censored or not. It's worse than if you were living back in the days of, just regular media. At least propaganda censorship. Here you can't ever tell whether you're being censored or not, but these computer geniuses who are all on the left wing and don't want any information out, one, about the Vatican. They don't want any information out about anything outside of their own little cause. And that is, did you ever hear what they want now? They want everything in this country to be free. They want to get rid of some agencies in government that are here to help protect a little bit of your safety. What else do they want? Let me tell you something. The Socialist Democratic Party has changed so much in this country that I don't even recognize it. I really don't. And it's an amazing story going on now. regarding how they're bringing this country to its knees, and they're doing it through basically people who just don't give a damn and will allow it to happen. That's what's so crazy about it, you know. People are so caught up, and I find it interesting that when you start to talk about the things I do on this show, and you know, I've done some comedy routines on it, trying to get people to laugh about it. Maybe that'll dig into their head, you know, that this is important. And I've even stood up on comedy stages talking about the truth, and people think it's something I'm making up, and I have fun with it. But look at some of these stories, like, was U.S. Cardinal Bernardin a secret Satanist involved in Freemasonry and homosexuality? Yeah. Carrie Berner, she's a former nun, talks about how she was abused in a nunnery, and she wrote a book called Divine Challenge. I remember the time I talked with Franco Collins from Australia, and he told me about the 25 most evil men in the world. And guess what? They weren't the ones you think. Some of them were basically, one was president of the United States. I ain't going to tell you which one. How about the Pope's dirty war in Argentina? I remember doing a story about the manufacturing of Mozart. Yeah. How Mozart really didn't write all those sonatas and all those operas. Yeah, believe it or not. And guess who did? That's a good question. And then I talk about the manufacturing of Shakespeare. They were involved in that too. And when I say they, you know who I mean. How about when I talk to Leo, who we've gotten along, we haven't gotten along. Leo Zagami, Vatican insider, he talks about Satan being at the doorstep of Rome. Huh. And then I start thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing? Why is it that only a Christian station will pick this information up? And then I go, well, listen, when it gets really down to it, I'm really not Christian. I don't know. I mean, a person like me has a hard time affiliating with anything religious because of my background in the Catholic Church, and because of being a journalist. I'm a constant questioner, and that's what they don't want. How many people in this country really want to question anything? No, they'll go so far, then they'll stop because their belief system is this. And you know, the dogs are letting me know something right now. Yeah, like I was saying, I do thousands of radio shows, and I always wonder why I do them anymore. And every day I say it's going to be my last, although I don't say it publicly like I am today, and I do another one. And I guess it's just kind of like I'm turned into some kind of robot that just keeps doing them. And how many shows, thousands of shows, and I think on many of them my dogs chime in, and I really enjoy it. It gets lonely here in these little radio studios when you talk to yourself. You don't have producers, you sit by a computer. It gets pretty boring, really, and I have to make up things. Luckily, I was an only child, and I used to, have to make up people, make up things, make up stories, and I find myself doing that today. But anyway, I'm thinking, why do Christian radio stations only pick this up about the Vatican stuff? And then they center on mostly the spiritual stuff, what happened in the Inquisition, and that there's a modern day Inquisition, and then Bible quotes after Bible quotes. And, that appeals to some people, but not to everyone. And so I try to broaden my base, and I find a lot of nutcases out there too, But not most of my listeners. Don't get me wrong. If you're listening, you're not a nutcase. You're basically looking for the truth, and you happen to stumble across this guy who Alex Jones called me a nutcase, but now he even agrees that Pope Francis is a little goofy, although he's got an ulterior motive. Somebody asked me about that this week, and I say, just go back to my shows. I go back years. I was on the same station he was, and perhaps he's Bill Hicks as well. So I'm thinking to myself, why would me be on a Christian station? I've tried to be a Christian sometimes just to fit in. But, when it boils down to, I don't like religion. I don't really like any of it, to be honest with you. And, well, of course, sure, I read the Bible. But, someone once asked me, will you go to heaven? I go, I don't know. And I guess I'll always be that way. As a journalist, I question everything to a point where, who can you believe? I mean, religion to me has always been this kind of thing that's out there that makes people feel good and makes them think that they're really going somewhere after this whole affair here we have on earth is over. And I'm not quite so sure about that. And I looked at all these religions, and they all have different scenarios. Some basically think you're going to come back as something else, and then there's many, many others. And I just find it difficult to latch on to one that makes a lot of sense to me. And although I can understand those who are deeply devout and faithful to their belief system, I hope that my show doesn't turn you off, because I've tried to understand it, and I may talk harshly about it. I may like people that talk harshly about it. But I think it's that kind of truth-seeking that maybe someday gets you there. And if I run out of time before I find out, I guess whatever happens, happens, right? But, I would think that, people say, well, God's going to judge you and you're going to go to hell if you don't get saved. And I go, oh God, who's going to save me? And they go, well, he loves everyone. I said, if he really loves everyone, why doesn't he give everybody a food to eat and a little shelter and be not a wrathful kind of God? I mean, that's a logical question, isn't it? And then there's always people that have a better answer for that believe in Christianity. And I respect that. But really, do they respect me? Or do they respect anybody else? Or are they just thinking, well, I'm going to try to bring him along on the road and someday he'll find it and I want to be helpful. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But I prefer to get help or to seek help on things that are happening in the world today. Just like all those people that are homeless. What are we doing about it? What are all you Christians doing about it? Praying for them? Well, let me tell you something. It ain't working. All right? Praying ain't working. Because there's more and more homeless people. Now, what are we doing about saving our country, so to speak? Putting, America first, so to speak. Well, we put Trump in there, but we know who he is. And their real end game is to bring America into a global world. One world religion, one world government. So what are we doing? Praying for it? It ain't working. Seems to get worse and worse and worse. And then somebody's going to come across and say, well, you know something? That's what God's plan is. And to me, that's always a scapegoat. When you can't think of an answer, that's what God's plan is. He intended it to be that way. And that to me is a shallow answer. Sorry, but I'm telling you the truth from the way I look at it. Now, does that mean that what you think is not true? No. How do you know? How can you prove something that is so difficult? You can't prove there's a God. You can believe in the God, but you can't ever prove it unless, you give me some hard facts, you show, and that sounds kind of gruff, but no one has been able ever to prove to me there is a God as they see it, whether it be an Indian, American Indian, whether it be a Buddhist, a Hindu, whatever, unless, or a Christian, because there hasn't been I don't see any solid evidence, and why should I believe it unless I have this blind faith? Now, what is blind faith? I've always wondered about terms like this. Blind faith. Okay, of course, you don't have to be blind to have faith, but I guess that means you don't have to worry about facts or anything. You just take it as it comes. That's when I ask you, well, how come the world's this way? And they'll say, that's God's plan. Because you have no damn idea what it's really like this for. Ask some people about it. There's so many of these phrases out there that we just take for granted. And I could come up with 100 of them. Some of my, I love some of the things that people say when they are put in a corner. And they'll go like this: the truth will set you free. What the hell does that mean? It ain't going to set me free. The truth, to tell you the truth's never going to set you free. And I'll tell you why. Because you can't get to the truth here. And if you know the truth, you're going to be in bondage in this country. So what does that mean? The truth will set you free. The truth is going to make you lonely. It's going to be terrible. It'll be something that you shouldn't even look for, maybe. Because when you find it, you're going to find yourself poor. You're going to find yourself alone. You're going to find yourself in this kind of corner that people that realize that and are smart enough to know, hey, let's lie for a living, they say, hey, I'm not getting to the truth because that's not going to set you free. And then somebody's going to say, well, the truth will set you free because that's what God said, and it'll bring you to his heavenly palace. All right, I want to go there right now. And then they'll say, well, you have to suffer for it. But they're the same people that when you look at the the Jesuits and their spiritual exercises, what about this? They say penance, or they'll hit themselves on the back with a whip because they want to suffer for Christ. And Christians will go, well, that's not right. Self-mutilation isn't right, I've always agreed with self-mutilation and tattoos. If these stupid people want to go around piercing their ears, tattooing their whole body, hey, that's the kind of world they want. That's fine with me. Fine with me. I'm all for it. Go ahead and pierce your whole body. What about these earrings people wear? There's no need for earrings. Men don't need to wear earrings. There used to be a message behind it. Now it's like what? Well, half the world doesn't even know what they are anymore, whether they're a man or a woman. And some want to aspire to be gender neutral. You tell me what gender neutral really is. Give me a break. Animals know more than we do. We've turned into a really stupid society. I'm afraid, and why do I laugh about it? Because I came to the realization I have no stake in this anymore. I don't really care whether you think one way or whether you're Christian, Buddhist, whatever. Because I'm just looking at it, having fun with it. And I'm taking a kind of approach that maybe some people will look at and go, wow, that's kind of fun. He can look at torture, self-mutilation, and say, good, do it if you want. Knock yourself out. You want to be gender neutral? You want to be whatever you want to be, you can be. And I'm having fun just overseeing and looking at it and saying, I'm going to do a little evaluation of all you people out there. And looking at it without any interest involved. I have no self-interest. I don't care what happens. I don't want to become rich. I don't want to become poor. I don't want to become in the heavenly godly world. I don't want to be coming back as a frog. I don't want anything. And so what does that make me? Disinterested party, but interested in the human condition. People actually think that they are important on this earth. They actually really think they can affect this land we live in because they use a little bit of carbon emissions. Oh, because they want to get rid of, the other day I got a straw in my soda and I said, this ain't plastic anymore. Oh, that's right. We got to get rid of all the plastic because we're destroying the earth. Do you realize that we're just kind of like a fly on an elephant here? The earth can just flick us away. Flick us right away. And you know who's going to be gone before the earth? Us. And so all these self-righteous people, save the earth, save this, save that, save that, save the whales, save this, save this. Oh my goodness. Don't use straws. Don't use plastic. Do you think plastic, that'll be the last redeeming thing that the earth will remember? This was a culture who left all their plastic. Now we got to get rid of it. That's what we're dealing with. This kind of crazy society that actually thinks that they can affect nature. Now, we got people out there who are actually doing that by destroying a lot of other people. These people are, your owners, the people who own you, the people who you believe in. They're out there weaponizing, they're out there doing all these crazy things to control the earth. They're trying to destroy this place we live in quicker, and really not destroy the earth, they're trying to destroy you. And everybody loves it. Everybody loves it. And they're going to bow down to it because they're going to tell you they're doing something good. and you're going to believe them. So, as I sit here on this show, and I know the Christians are going, I'm going to save him, don't worry. Well, you know what? Today I don't want to be saved. Maybe tomorrow. What the heck? You never know. People can change, right? Maybe tomorrow, but not today. Today I'm in a mood to tell you, once you get to a point where you've asked so many questions and you start looking at all the answers that make absolutely no sense, you start saying to yourself, how far does it really go? How far does it really go? I remember once somebody asked me, why don't you really tell the truth? And I said, I don't really know what the truth is anymore. I really don't. And all I do is keep pecking away at everything I can see and asking questions. And let the chips fall where they are. What I want to talk about in the second half hour, when's the proper time you can actually talk about somebody bad or sort of semi-bad after he died? And I thought I'd go back to some of my old articles with a Mr. Bob Dumas talking about the late Senator John McCain. I found it really kind of interesting how they propped this guy up in Washington. They gave him kind of like a Lincoln burial. They had paraded him around and said nothing but good things about him. And everybody else that knows the truth about him or has come out on my show and said this is the truth about John McCain, which started in 2005. I'm looking at an article that I wrote in October 25th, 2005 about who this guy really is. And then I saw all of the people in the media, even the CNN Democrats, because McCain supposedly was not in the Trump camp, applauding this man as American hero, saying things like, he represents the values of America, and everyone should strive to be like John McCain. And then you had every senator, saying all these things about him that were glorious, and then they gave him this 27,000 gun salute. They paraded him through Washington. They had a state burial. They put their flags at half-mast. I mean, this thing was overboard for a senator. It was like he was a president. And there, some of these presidents, you never hear the truth about them either. So anyway, I thought, give the guy a few days, because most people will say, how can you talk about that guy? Because what is really comedy? Tragedy plus time equals comedy. And so it's interesting, the things you can say about 9/11 now, you couldn't say 18 years ago, now that 9/11's coming up again. And right after John McCain dies, it wasn't kind of right to say anything or bring up this article, but now it is. It's been what? And since they paraded him around, I thought Bob Dumas, and I'm not sure if Bob's even around anymore, but Bob has a legitimate gripe with him, and he knows a lot of the truth about McCain. And I'm going to leave you one question. If this guy was such a great war hero, why did he seal his own POW documents for life so no one can really see them? I always wondered that, because if he was a hero, wouldn't he want everybody to know exactly what happened to him over there? Or maybe the story was a bit different. And you're going to hear what Bob Dumas has to say in the next half hour on the Investigative Journal. And these dogs are just waiting to say something to you. Back in 3 minutes.